Good evening, Vava. How are you?
Good evening, Cherie. Thanks for having me. I'm great and nice to see you.
Yes, I think this we've spoke or communicated via email, but our first time really speaking, really seeing each other, and so it's such a pleasure. As I was saying earlier, your reputation just precedes you with all of the amazing work that you're doing in the coffee industry. So congratulations.
Thanks a lot, and I'm humbled by your kind words. Thanks.
Thank you. So, we want to just get into a little bit more in your story. Again, we've had the honor of featuring you a couple of times in Quincy Noir, but we can't share everything, right? So it's always nice to have these conversations and have our listeners be able to just to hear you tell more of your story. And so would love to dive in from the very beginning, the very beginning. Born and raised Kenya. Tell me
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
about that. Tell me a little bit about the childhood, and where was coffee around during that time?
To be honest, I knew nothing about coffee growing up. I just sort of discovered, but sort of I knew that we grew coffee in Kenya,
Mhm.
but more so fell in love with it and started asking questions when I left Kenya. So
Okay.
that's an interesting, part of this story, in that, and just to warn you, you're going to hear the call to prayer right now just because I'm in Lamu, so they do have a call to prayer
Okay.
around this time, so don't mind the background noise. It's
We
just
love it. It's authentic. I love it. I love
yeah.
it.
So growing up in Kenya was, I would say, I loved it, but I think I appreciate the journey more after the exposure to the Western world. I now appreciate the upbringing in Kenya and the things that I was exposed to.
Mhm.
And I think I appreciated home once I left it. I don't know if that's like something that happens to everyone, but for me, it's like the richness of the culture, the richness of the people, the richness of the things that were readily available to me, like fresh food,
Mhm.
fresh, like coffee, just love, just like the honesty of the people and everything. I appreciated that more when I left Kenya. So
Mhm.
growing up, grew up in a middle class family, and the point of emphasis was often education, 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 and um, like education is the most important thing, and no one can take that away from you once you're the best in class and things like that. So I think maybe that's where my A-type personality was developed, because I was so competitive, like trying to get all the A grades and everything,
Right.
and um and I grew up in a family of 7 kids, so it's like we were always competing for everything in the house as well: food, resources, attention. So
Now, where do you fall in that line of seven kids?
I'm the middle child, the often
Oh.
forgotten middle child.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yes, but I'm the first daughter, so I guess that gave me some sort of privilege with, especially my father, who I guess I don't want to say this because my siblings are gonna like, but they all know I was the favorite of my father. So I was my father's favorite child, and so. But I always say that I worked hard for all the favoritism. Like I was not just given everything I asked for. I worked for it. If I wanted to go watch a movie, if I wanted like candy, I'd just make sure I just show up, with a good grade, or like, show my dad some attention, and then he'd be like, "Yay, let's, go shopping or whatever." And I think so. Then I think through the fact that my parents were really passionate about investing in education, they felt that Canada was one of the best places to send me for my uni. But initially, because I left home at the age of 16,
Okay.
they felt that sending me to some relatives in Toronto was the best way to like sort of bridge the gap between me finishing high school to entering uni. So then I was sent to do my A levels. So I did the equivalent of A levels in Ontario. So I did like a year and a half of high school doing the OACs. That's the Ontario Academic Credits. And then I joined London, Ontario, the University of Western Ontario in London.
Okay.
So, and I would say that that's where the coffee journey started, was in Canada, was the mornings, I'm looking at my aunt and uncle, making coffee and whatever. Then started going to Tim Hortons, started going to Starbucks,
Wow.
visiting Barnes and Noble, and you're like, and then, but I think what triggered me, or what caught my attention, was the branding of Kenyan coffee, and I was like, wow, this is from Kenya.
Mm,
But then why don't I see producers featured? Why don't I see? I just see an elephant, like the logos that are often the
mhm,
common logos that you see, an elephant or coffee cherries and whatever. So for me, that started triggering some questions, the economics and the social justice behind all of this, because I was like, if a price of a cappuccino, of a price of an espresso is this much, how much is really going to the farmers? And in my family, we are coffee producers as well. My grandma grew coffee for years. We still have coffee in the family.
mhm.
But every time I went home, they were not happy. They were just like, coffee is not bringing any benefits. We're getting ripped off.
Mhm,
But I was
mm,
wondering, if you're getting ripped off, why are you still laboring on this crop? Like, why are you still waking up early in the morning picking the cherries? Is it a hobby? Is it, I never quite understood that disgruntlement with producers vis-a-vis, like, they'll still pluck the cherries. They'll still get us to go pluck cherries and then still complain about the prices. So I was like, there's definitely got to be a benefit, because the demand is there. And because I was looking at the volumes of which US, Canada, Scandinavian countries are importing coffee. But I was like, there's something amiss here. There's something amiss even in the storytelling, because for me, what was lacking was I never felt connected to the coffees that I saw. As
mhm.
much as they stated Kenya coffee, I didn't feel any emotional, I was not drawn emotionally. I was just drawn to the name. It's a coffee from a country that I'm from.
Right.
However, there's something amiss, because they're not talking about the producers. They're just talking about the flavor profile, the region it's from,
Mhm,
and that's it. And then how do we actually verify how much the producer was paid?
right.
So, and being a student of economics and statistics and math and all of that, like, for me, I was just like, this is not making sense. So in fact, I started asking questions in my economics class. I was taking first year economics, and I think the professors were just like, nah, like, why are we digging deep on coffee, or what does
Right.
that matter? Yeah, so I guess that's where, like, the curiosity started that led me down this path to today.
Wow. So then you went on to college, graduated, and were you working in the field of science, math, the math science? Were you working in that field? And then what was that aha or that moment that's like, you know what, about to make this change?
To be honest, like, the only reason I did what I did in school, or what I studied, actuarial science, statistics, with a minor in economics, and eventually I dropped the economics because the main degree was hectic enough. Like, the stats and the actuarial science was already so heavy. I
Ah,
loved economics. I love economics to date, but and all the theories, some of which I question, but I had to drop econ. Then I only took it because that was my greatest strength. I've always been really good at numbers and math.
mhm.
Questionable today with the business, but I do not like doing my own accounts, because I just don't think that's something that anyone should do.
Mhm,
But I understand numbers pretty well, so I'm
mhm,
comfortable with numbers, and that is why I took the course. But I've always been passionate about numbers. So even today, I'm with my company. I'm extremely passionate about data, and I use data to tell stories.
mhm.
So I never quite worked in actuarial science and stats.
Okay.
The moment My aha moment was actually as an undergrad at the University of Western Ontario, but I never told anyone, because I was so scared that
Mm,
it would break my mother's heart. Like, she's invested this much. At that time, we just lost my father in the year of 2000. So I felt, and there was this push, being from the typical middle class African family, that you're supposed to go use your degree, get a good job, work in Toronto, get that job that brings in good paper, that supports your family, support your mother, like, do all of that. And this was not the moment to take the risks, like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm not going to have an income for, like, the longest time. And I'm just taking risks. So I hid that, though, like, the feeling of I just want to run my own business. I knew that from the moment I was like in my second year of uni. I figured I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I guess that whole thing of, when you're in America or when you're in Canada or North America, I feel like when you have a dream, there's like that push to like, oh, dreams are valid and you can pursue anything, as opposed to when you're in Africa, where we've been brought up to work the 9 to 5 and work for other people, and we're
Mhm.
really not encouraged to pursue dreams. It's like when you grow up in Africa, it's like, don't dream, do what's practical. Like, go get a job and bring in the money, support your family. And as women, we are told not to take risks. It's like, what are you risking? The more risk you take, the more unattractive you become to men, the more unattractive you become to, um, like the more hardcore you become, and the more like people are like, oh my God, she's not marriage material and all of that. And these are things that even when I was taking these steps, finally, when I broke the news to like my family and my mother, the one thing she said is like, I don't think no man wants to marry a woman who's just like struggling like this, like
Oh,
doing all of this thing. Like,
wow.
so, and but I forgave her for all of that, because I'm like, this is what society brings us up to believe, is that
Mhm.
there's like a code to life. It's, if you're given these opportunities in life, take the straight and narrow. Don't, you know don't take the path less traveled. Take the path that leads you to the success that society knows. Take the
Mhm.
path where, if you're pursuing this, you can still leave room for marriage, you can still have kids, that kind of thing. But don't take some crazy risks, and don't get into an industry that you're not familiar with.
Right.
So for me, when I finally broke the news was after I did my master's. So I had to do the right thing, and I had to get another degree. For the second degree was just so that I could actually be like, okay, I've got 2 degrees now, an undergrad, a master's. I'm not doing a PhD,
Right.
because I don't want to be an academic. But there was also the push for me to be an academic at some point. But I was
Okay.
like, the days of books for me, those kind of books are done. I want to do research, but in another way. I want to contribute to agriculture and coffee in a way that I feel adds value. And that way for me is economic empowerment, um, better storytelling, better traceability. Those are the things that spoke to me. And to be honest, between you and I mean, when I say this out loud, I'm like, those are all the things that, the things that formed me at the base, the math, the statistics, the data, the the tenacity to slog on night after night, just doing research, working on an
Mhm.
assignment, trying to, and being very competitive. So I feel like those are the things that really gave me, sort of propelled me to where I am today. But explaining that to like people that just look at the surface of things doesn't make sense. So eventually, after my master's, I broke the news to my mother. It was not easy. There was silence
Mhm.
for a couple of years. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, we didn't speak for a very long time. It was almost like 2 years. And
Oh.
but I know today she respects my work. She's wowed by everything. And in fact, she doesn't understand how it's happened. Like, she's just like, she does not understand how I'm doing what I do. Um, so yeah, so that's
Wow. So where did you so when you broke the news, what was the vision at the time? So when you said, "This is where the direction I'm gonna go in," what was your vision to at least start that when you broke that news to her?
at that point, because first of all, I realized I was living in a house, I had no capital, I was just someone with a dream. And I was going in a direction that was the opposite. The vision was, I wanted to put together a team of university students to work with me to collect data that would inform why I am setting up a social enterprise to actually work with farmers from the grassroots level,
Mhm.
market the coffee, and try and sell that coffee directly, like to export coffee directly to roasters, to importers. But I wanted at the very core to start with data. I wanted to travel through coffee growing regions in Kenya, collect valid, data that could inform investors, that could
Mhm.
inform my family where I was making this decision. But more importantly, I wanted to source the coffee both for the local market,
Mhm.
but more importantly, I wanted to dive into the export market like immediately. But then at this point, to be honest, Cherie, I knew nothing about, like, I knew something, but then I, looking back, I knew nothing. I thought I knew something, and then when I started digging deeper, I was like, you knew nothing about how this industry operates. And I'm like, to date, I say the naivety protected me. The naivety helped me really, like, I don't know, there's an American saying, or like, reach for the, not the stars, but like just keep going and keep going. Like, that whole ignorance is bliss. At that moment, the ignorance was bliss, because had I known all the obstacles and how the industry actually operates, I would never have done it. Like, I would
Oh,
totally be
wow.
like, I would never have done it, because it's tough. And like, if you even listen to like some podcasts that I've done, or some write-ups that we've written about, like how the Kenyan coffee sector operates and how much capital you actually need to do one sale, like to trade, like even 30 bags of coffee, or to fill a container load of coffee, and to attract the kind of clientele that we attract today, like it's taken 10 years plus. Like, I'm like, my daughter is 13 years, and I started the company, the export company, when she was literally like in my belly, is when like some of this stuff was happening.
Wow.
So I'm like, it's taken me this long to figure things out. And to be honest with you, it's like, it's a new game, it's a new experience every day, because the world is constantly changing. And
Yeah.
even at the point whereby COVID happened, that was also like a new moment of like pivoting, changing the business, doing things differently, talking to clients and asking, for new terms and a bunch of things. So,
Right.
but I'll let you lead the flow of the conversation.
That's no, I can understand, and I know we've I've sort of been, clued in on a little bit of, I can imagine just the obstacles that you've had to overcome, especially when you look at just getting to the bottom of it. I would imagine of why aren't, Kenyan coffee farmers making the money that they should be making? So there's that whole, what's going on there. So, I mean, I'm sure you were starting to uncover all of this, and what's going on, and yeah. So, how did you begin to how did you stay encouraged to begin to navigate through that? Because obviously you've kept going and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, I know.
Yeah. Okay. The To be honest, it's been like, I think the innate, first of all, I think I had to really work on my own self-confidence, and I think that came from the exposure that my parents afforded me throughout my entire life, was the upbringing that I've had, which I would say the basis of that, the fundamentals of that have been, you can do anything you put your mind to, but
Mhm.
it requires hard work, and don't wait for handouts. Like,
Mm,
and growing up, I always sort of make a joke that we grew up military style, but we did grow up military style. Like, my parents were like no nonsense folks who were like, you want something, you got to earn it, like even if it's like an outing or whatever. Like, and so we were brought up in like a, highly disciplined family,
mhm.
um, where good grades were required, good behavior, all of that stuff. Of course, some things right now, we always make a joke with my mother that it was abuse, but I joke about it, but it, it was like, it was just, I would say, African style upbringing, where an ass whooping is not a big thing. Like, your ass is
Mhm.
going to be whooped if you do the wrong thing, and you don't talk back and whatever. But of course, I'm raising my daughter in a different way, in that conversations are good, and ass whoopings not so much, like the way we used to get our asses whooped. So it's I think the personal grounding is what has sort of pushed me this far, because honestly, the obstacles on a day to day are so many. As
Right.
I'm talking to you, I'm in Lamu, and I'm like preparing for the cultural festival next week. This is a new business, like the cafe and the school are new businesses that we just kicked off this year. And to be honest, I don't even know how it's happened. Like, it's I can tell you, like, I can sit down with you and tell you, okay, this day I thought this, I planned this out, but plans mean nothing in life sometimes because shit happens. And it's like, and I think there's life is funny in that life challenges you. It's like, how quickly can you adopt to change? Like how quickly, like if a tornado hits you today, like how quickly can you think on your feet when you're down and out, and how quickly can you get up and get back up and do exactly what you need to be doing? So
Exactly.
adaptability is a word that is near and dear to me. Is how quickly can I adapt, and also how does is a failure necessarily a bad thing? Is this a failure or is it a moment to learn? And I'm like, that sounds like one of those fancy things you read, but I'm like, I've learned that no longer to beat myself so much about things that go wrong, but to look at that and be like, what am I getting out of this and how can I learn from it? Even if it's like someone nasty that I've worked with, someone who's like rubbed me the wrong way, someone who's messed us up. I
Hmm.
always look at that and I'm like, how can I how can I continue communicating with this person and what can I take from this?
Right.
So to answer you like succinctly, it's my personal grounding, my personal belief in myself
Hmm.
that has brought me this far. It's had I not believed in myself or the
Right.
dream or the vision, there's so many things that happen that knock you off, the ground on a day to day. And if you don't believe in yourself, other people stop believing in you as well. Like if you start doubting yourself, and I've noticed in life, it's like also people can smell when you have money, and then people can also smell when you're going through a rough time. It's something funny in life. It's that like it's in life that there's people who gravitate towards you because they can tell, oh, she's doing well. But then there's
Mhm.
moments you're going through like a turmoil in business, and then people are just like floating away, and the people that used to call you don't call you no more. I don't know if you've experienced that in life. It says people can smell when you're going through a rough patch, and they're like, I'm not
Wow.
calling this one right now. But I mean, but to be honest, that's the grounding, and like literally being like a horse in a race is
Right.
what's kept me going.